Joining me today is Ashlyn Quinn, and she is coming to us from Carl Sandburg Community College in Illinois, where she is studying statistics as well as natural resources with an emphasis in agriculture. And she's a former chapter president from Monmouth Roseville High School in Monmouth, Illinois. Ashlyn, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. I am looking forward to the conversation. You've got a lot of stuff going on that I've never covered on the show before, so I'm going to have a lot of questions for you, I think. Well, why don't we start out like this? I'd love to just ask you a few questions just about you so our audience can get to know who they're listening to. Is that okay with you?
Sounds fine.
All right. Well, how old are you now?
I'm 19.
Okay. And when you are at home, when you're not at school, are you on a farm, are you in a town, or something kind of in the middle of those two?
I'm in a very small town.
Very small town. Okay. Is that Monmouth?
Yeah.
Okay. How small? What does a small town mean to you?
Our town is less than 10,000. I'd say our high school has about 500 students altogether.
Okay.
And that's with a bunch of other much even smaller towns. We're a consolidated school district, so
okay.
The whole area is pretty small.
All right. Now, how long have you been part of the FFA?
I joined as a freshman.
Okay, as a freshman. And what brought you in? Why did you want to be a member?
My family members were, my sister was an FFA before me. My grandparents, my dad, they were all in FFA. And at first, when I was kind of in 8th grade, it wasn't a, hey, you should do this if you want to. It was a kind of like, you're going to be an FFA. Like, you don't have a choice. Like, we've all done it. You're going to do it too, which I didn't really have a problem with. And I fell in love with the organization myself anyway. So.
Okay, so you had a deep family legacy and a lot of people saying you're carrying this forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Any brothers or sisters to help you to carry that tradition on if you hadn't wanted to?
My older sister was an FFA, but no littler siblings than me to carry it on.
Okay, so you were it. You were the last one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you ended up being your chapter's president, so something must have worked out there for you.
Yeah.
That's great. Why did you choose to be an officer?
I had some very good friends in FFA that were all older than me, and they helped me and they encouraged me to run for an office my freshman year and kind of just get on the team, even if it was like a really low position. And then they kind of kept pushing me to keep going each year and try for a higher office. And my advisor, of course, was pushing me, and I had some great student teachers that I had that were there in my time in FFA. And even they were pushing me to, try to be better, try to achieve that higher office and be as involved as I could be.
Okay. Did you have an interest in agriculture before you became an FFA member?
Oh, for sure. Both sides of my family farm. So
Okay.
I've grown up on farms and been around it my whole life. So.
Okay. What kind of farming is your family doing?
One side is a hog operation plus corn and soybeans, and the other side just does corn and soybeans.
Got it. Okay. So I have not been to Illinois yet, but I get to interview a lot of students. I've interviewed a ton from Illinois, and hogs and corn and soybean. I hear that a lot when I'm interviewing students from Illinois. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. I'm not surprised. You can't really drive anywhere for longer than probably, 20 minutes without seeing one of those three things.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, let's do this. I'd love to acknowledge who your advisor or advisors were during the time you were in high school. Would you mind mentioning those folks?
Jason Kilburn was my advisor all 4 years.
All 4 years, and he had everybody. He was the sole advisor?
Yep. He's our only ag teacher, our only advisor.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for mentioning him. I always like to do that. And Ashlyn, I'm going to take a second just to acknowledge a couple great sponsors of this show. Everybody, I want to talk about Powder River Livestock Handling Equipment. They have been a sponsor of the Off-Farm Income Podcast for years now. And I tell you what, I grew up knowing about this company. Where I grew up, everybody that had cattle, they had Powder River. They were using their equipment, and as I've lived in multiple places outside of California in the West since growing up, Idaho, Montana, working around Nevada, in those areas, Oregon, I continue to see Powder River everywhere. Well, now I'm a proud owner myself of a Powder River squeeze chute and Powder River panels, and we use them for our cattle on our farm here in Idaho, and we want you to do the same thing. You can find everything they've got to offer when it comes to handling your large livestock, your cattle, at powderriver.com. And hey, if your local farm and ranch retailer is not selling Powder River in their yard, let them know you'd like to see that equipment out there. You're not going to find finer equipment that was developed with more challenging cattle in mind than what Powder River has done. Find them over at powderriver.com. And of course, everybody, always during my FFA episodes, I love to mention this next sponsor, and that is Lacrosse Footwear. You can find them at lacrossefootwear.com. Always very proud to support the FFA by annually sponsoring 15 scholarships along with 100 jackets as part of the Give the Gift of Blue program. It's just been a thrill and an honor for me to be partnered up with Lacrosse. Of course, we use their Alpha Range boots here on our farm, and we use a wide array of their other products, too, off of the farm for hunting and walking around in the snow out here in Idaho in the mountains and doing all of that. But really, the Alpha Range boots were the answer to a long search of mine to find a neoprene-based rubber boot that could stand up to what I do on the farm every day of the year. And Lacrosse was that answer, and that was way before they ever became a sponsor. So we hope you'll slip a pair of those on your feet. You can find them at lacrossefootwear.com. All right, so Ashlyn, let's talk about your supervised agricultural experience. This is one of the areas that's going to be new for me, and I want to hear what you've been doing.
All right, so my main SAE project is in safety. I have a smaller one in ag education, but my safety one is what I usually compete with.
Okay.
And for that book, I work at my local YMCA. I have since 2016. When I turned 15, I got lifeguard certified. And since 2016, I have added, as well as lifeguarding, I've become a swim lesson instructor, a day camp counselor, and I work at the front desk.
Okay. So when we say safety, or when you say safety, we're talking about hands-on, I am out here watching the pool, making sure everybody is safe type safety.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Now, this has been interesting interviewing students from Illinois because you have a couple categories there that I never hear in other states, and I think you recognize that as well. So with your safety SAE, you were able to compete for proficiency and things like that at the state level, but since it's not a national category, that's where it stopped for you.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I think with Illinois, the same with food service. That's another one that I've come across in Illinois where it stops at the state level.
Yes.
Okay, so your state is doing a lot, your state FFA council is doing a lot to make sure that FFA can be very inclusive and find ways to include everybody regardless of what it is you need to do for your job outside of high school, I guess.
Definitely, yes.
Well, that is great. Okay, so how did you become a lifeguard?
I've been swimming since I was very, very young, and my swim coach is also my boss. So kind of like the joining FFA thing, it wasn't hey, you can get certified when you turn 15. It's you are going to get certified when you turn 15 because I know you can swim and I know you can pass the test. So I wasn't really given an option on that one either, but it's not a hard job, and it's something that I knew I was capable of. So it seemed like a pretty logical place for a first job.
Now, I've been swimming since I was very young too, but I am no lifeguard. So when you say swimming, do you mean competitive swimming?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. What kind of competitive swimming have you been doing? Is it like relays? Is it? Well, you just tell us because I'm going to just display my ignorance if I try and say anything.
I joined my Y team when I was very little. I've been swimming multiple seasons now. So yeah, I'm part of relay teams. Our relay team actually does really well. We're a state relay team. Our state meets actually here next weekend already.
Okay.
But I swim other, like my own individual events as well. But yeah, I think this is like my 13th season or something like that. I can't even remember anymore.
Okay. So 13 seasons of competitive swimming, and your coach works at the YMCA. As your coach, like in charge of the lifeguards? What's that person's position?
She is the aquatic director. Yeah, she's in charge of anything that has to deal with the pool, it has to go through her first.
Okay. Now, how old were you when you first started as a lifeguard?
I was 15.
15. So that's 4 years ago. Do you continue to do it even while you're in college now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I'm still working now.
Still working now, and it's at the YMCA, so I'm assuming the pool's indoors. Do you work year-round?
It is indoors. I do work year-round. We actually will be opening our outdoor pool this summer. We've been building that for about the past year now.
Okay.
So that's new. That'll be a nice learning challenge, how to run that our first year.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different environment. Maybe, I don't know, more of a... I'm picturing The Sandlot. Have you ever watched The Sandlot?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm picturing The Sandlot when you say the outdoor pool, but I don't know. That's probably not right.
Yeah.
Right.
Really busy, lots of kids. Sounds about right.
Okay, that's what I'm picturing. Interesting. So now, so you've got this training, you've got this certification, you've got these skills. Have you ever had to use them?
I have not, thankfully. The only really rescues I would say I've had to do, I did have to do a reaching assist. Luckily, they were close enough to the wall. I didn't even have to get in. And then I was actually off duty once on my own vacation in at a water park. And there was a little girl near me that started drowning. And since I was right there, I was kind of able to get to her before a lifeguard could.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of swooped in and grabbed her and got her to some shallower water where she could touch and swim on her own again.
Okay.
But thankfully, I've never had to do a big save that I consider, with full CPR, AED, EMS, all that. I've never had to deal with one of those. So I'm very thankful for that.
Now, that's interesting. You said that while you were at that water park, you could see that the little girl was starting to drown. I know there's a perception out there of what people look like when they're drowning, and then there's the reality, which doesn't look like our perception. So how could you tell?
She was very young, and she did have a life jacket on, and you could tell that the life jacket had kind of come up too far on her. There was waves that were splashing, over her face, getting water in her mouth. She was kind of crying and starting to scream a little bit, and I could tell she was getting distressed. And of course, if you let that go on, eventually that's when what would happen as you consider your perception is where someone would eventually, go under and start sinking. Luckily, she was still active. We call them active when they're still conscious and able to talk to us. And I was able to get to her before anything else happened. Had I not seen her, or maybe had, the lifeguard had to take the time to get to her, if she had started to inhale too much water, she could have just gone under and stayed under, maybe bobbed up a couple of times, but not really able to get her mouth above water. Those are the things we look for normally when... because, of course, you always want, lifeguards are very preventative. You want to spot it before you get to that worst-case scenario.
Sure.
So those are the things you want to look for first, is that someone is getting to the point where they are getting distressed and something worse could happen, and that's when you want to take your action. So
better to be proactive than reactive, of course, when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That is interesting. So now how do you tie this all together and make it fit with the FFA?
It was a challenge when I was a freshman because I knew that eventually I wanted to get my state degree. I wanted to, be a section officer. I wanted to get my American degree down the line. And even though my family farms, the farm is not a reasonable enough distance that I could go every day and do chores and have my book be in that. And so we were trying to find an area that I was able to do, and there was the greenhouse at school, I could do a project in there, or, all this other stuff. And we were trying to really stretch it. And then my advisor said, well, there's a safety area. He goes, if you become a lifeguard, he goes, safety, lifeguarding is part of that, and you can make that your book. So that was kind of the most reasonable option for me, was taking that and making that my book. The Ag Ed book was a little easier. My mom is a teacher, so that was kind of my in. Was going to her classroom and starting. In my school district, you don't get an agriculture class until 8th grade. That's the first time you are exposed to an actual classroom setting, and it's only a semester. And then in high school, you have all your classes that you can take. And we got to thinking about it one day, and especially in the area we're from, where it's very, very rural,
Mm-hmm.
like kids are exposed to all of this stuff, but if they're not, actually growing up on those farms, they don't even know what's going on.
Okay.
And all of that stuff influences our community so greatly because we're such a rural area. And so I decided that my ag ed book, I wanted to be able to go to classrooms in kind of lower grades and be able to expose them a little bit earlier. Also, that way they were just kind of open to the ideas about what was going around them beforehand, before they even, had grown all the way up. And that way, by the time they got to 8th grade in high school, they already had a little background about ag and FFA, and they would be more like willing and excited to join and create their own experience there.
Okay. Now, it almost sounds like you were teaching safety stuff, like staying on theme with safety stuff around the farm. Am I hearing that correctly?
There was, yeah. Yeah, we definitely did some lessons that were just basic, like since we started in the fall, my first lesson would usually go over just basic ag safety and then go into kind of harvest safety a little bit, having to look out for farmers because there will be combines and tractors and all sorts of stuff on the roads. Late at night, those are the really bright lights you see in the fields at night. Are those farmers still working? And so, yeah, each time I would try to incorporate even a little bit of safety into my ag ed lessons, which was really nice that I was able to tie my books in that way.
Okay. Really interesting. Wow, good for you getting out there and teaching those kids. I like that a lot. Now, I want to ask you about your major. I've never had a student on the show yet who is majoring in statistics, and I'm very curious. Where did that come from? Why did you want to major in statistics?
I took my first statistics class when I was a junior in high school. It was just one semester, and I'm not someone that necessarily hates school, but I don't necessarily enjoy going to school either.
Okay.
And other than my ag classes, statistics was kind of one of those first classes that I actually enjoyed going to and enjoyed learning about. Just like all the number crunching and the data and the analyzing of stuff. And I don't know, I think that's just kind of the way my brain works too. And that kind of stuck with me. So when I was a senior, I took a dual credit in statistics through the college I actually attend right now.
Okay.
And the more I took it, the more I was kind of I could do something with this, and I could see myself, going into this field. But the other side of me was you're never going to not be able to work in the agriculture industry. You'll never be able to handle not doing that, which is why I chose my other major too, is that eventually I'll combine them and kind of be an analyst and use the statistics knowledge I have to help me in my ag field.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a ton of use for statistics in that kind of knowledge, that kind of brain, by the way, in agriculture, because there's a lot of numbers out there we're paying attention to. And trends and all sorts of different things. I mean, I don't know. I've taken one intensive statistics class, and boy, that was a tough class for me. So I don't know how you do it, but my hat's off to you, because that is tough coursework. Wow. Very cool.
Yeah, I think that's the response I get most of the time when I tell people that is, really, that was the class I hated the most in college, and that's what you're going to major in? But, yeah.
Well, it's funny. I got to where I passed that class because I could work all the formulas. I knew where things went and how to do it, but I never got to the point where I could explain why a standard deviation is important or why a population size is important and all of that. I just knew how to work the formulas. I couldn't give you the concepts. Well, good for you. That's really cool. So I know you're going to be transferring. Is it the end of this year that you're transferring?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'll graduate from my community school.
Okay. And actually, we're airing this episode, in August. So by the time this comes out, you will be getting ready to start at your next campus. Do you know where you're going to be going?
I'll be going to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Okay. Very good. Is that a long ways from home?
It's about 2.5, 3 hours.
Okay. 2.5 to 3 hours. Really interesting stuff. Wow. So you'll have to find a new YMCA to be a lifeguard at.
Yeah, they got a pool on campus, so maybe I can work there.
Okay. Very good. Well, Ashlyn, this has been very cool. I've enjoyed hearing the whole story. I want to ask you, you found a way to incorporate something you've been doing your whole life that people would not look at and incorporate, and associate with agriculture. You found a way to bring that into the FFA and kind of wrap it all into one bundle so you could kind of be more efficient with everything you were doing. What advice would you have for a student out there who's coming into the FFA? They've got a passion that most people would not associate with agriculture if they wanted to try to figure out a way to combine the two.
My best advice is that it might take a little bit of a roundabout way. You might have to combine some stuff together, but you can definitely relate them and find a way to make it work. I mean, if I can do it, I'm pretty sure anyone else can do it. You just got to talk to your advisor, figure out that area that speaks to you and where you can put in something you're passionate about and make your experience with it.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your time with us. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.